I'm gonna hit record, and that's recording. We'll walk around here. I've already said this is your host, blah blah blah, and we're gonna hit record now. Okay, so hey everybody, today is episode 104. This is a big deal because this is the 1 year anniversary of the beginning of my journey doing a podcast. Today happens to be May the 11th. It's the day after my birthday, and it's also the day before Mother's Day. So happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there, and happy Mother's Day to you.
Thank you.
Special lady. I happen to have with me today my wife, Deloris, who is who's put up with me with this habit, this obsession, this crazy thing that I've been doing for a solid year, and thank you for putting up with it.
Well, congratulations.
Well, thank you.
You've stuck with it for a year, twice a week for a year.
Does that make you crazy a little bit?
No, not at all. Not at all. It doesn't surprise me either.
Really?
No. You're all in. You're an all-in kind of guy.
I'm an all-in kind of guy. Yeah. Well, Mama said, don't. Was it? My mama didn't raise no quitter.
That's right.
Yeah. If you're gonna do something, do it all the way. Years ago, I started talking to you about podcasts when I was driving over the road. I would talk to you about how I was listening to all these podcasts, and you, at the time, did you ever think, "Hey, one day I'll listen to podcasts"?
No, I didn't think I would. Didn't think I'd be interested at all.
But you've gotten into them.
Very interested into them.
And I noticed that one of your favorite. I talked about this before. One of your favorite things to listen to and talk about and be sort of obsessed with is Disney and
Yes.
Disney culture. And there happens to be a lot of Disney podcasts out there that you're interested in.
There's a lot of them, and a lot of them are really good.
What are some of the ones you listen to?
I listen to Jim Hill Media. He does. He is a Disney historian. Just a very interesting guy. Love to hear him talk. He's been has a lot of inside contacts that works for Disney now. He's actually branched out in the last probably 6 months. He's branched out. Instead of doing just one podcast, he was doing like one a week. Now he does more. He does different topics. He has certain people that he hosts with that do. They do Universal Studios. They do Star Wars. They do Marvel. And it is very interesting. I love, and he usually puts out. They're usually about 30 to 40 minutes, and he puts out 2 to 3 a week. And I listen to every one of them.
Now, in the beginning, he was a little more staggered with his. Is that right?
Yeah, at the beginning he was.
Because he was doing a lot of history.
He's doing a lot of history. He still does a lot of history with one of his podcasts with a gentleman that he does. This guy is a statistics guy. And he does. He works, I guess, freelance for Disney. Mm-hmm. He does. He helps Disney design queues to hold people, and they just do some very interesting podcasts. Love hearing the story of. He has a lot of contacts who's been with the Disney company for years, and they do. He talks about how rides exist, how they get rid of them, how they create them, things like that. So I find that very interesting.
Yeah, you've at times, gone into great lengths of telling me, how they design the queues and how they, will choose to sometimes add or take away extra cars to help the flow or to maybe kind of push people in a different direction so that they experience other parts of the park and stuff like that. And the science of that is really fascinating. And, learning that kind of stuff is really cool, especially if you're into that kind of stuff. I mean, you can get really into it, but I mean that's not the only one you listen to. There's several other Disney ones, right?
No, I do. I listen to. It's called mousechat.net, and it is a group of 4. They're travel agents. It's a husband and wife team that own the travel company. They live, I think, in the Atlanta area, and they have 2 of their travel agents. One is up in New York area. One is in the Virginia area. And they do one about once a week, one every 10 days. They do about an hour and a half, and they go to Disney a lot. So they give you some great insider tips on when to catch certain rides, when to make reservations for dining and things like that. And you and I have been so many times to Disney that we try to experience different things now. We're not so much about the actual rides anymore. It's just experiencing the whole the environment.
Well, I noticed there were several episodes that we listened to, or you got me to listen to, where they talked about certain places to eat and certain places to watch fireworks from.
Right.
And it's been good tips. I mean, these are people who, of course, go there all the time because of their job, but then they also enjoy it so much that they're also sharing information with the listener.
Right.
And then that helps people like you who are big into it to plan a really good vacation, and you've done a great job, by the way.
Well, thank you for that.
My wife, if you don't know, is a super planner. I am sort of the let's jump in and see what happens kind of guy. As you've listened to this podcast over the last year, you've heard a lot of times I don't have a plan. I had to get my ducks in a row today because she was going to be on here and I was a little nervous. So, but also I say that jokingly. I'm not nervous. I can kind of free flow talk anything. So anyway, so you got the 2 podcasts there, and is there any more Disney podcasts?
Disney podcasts, no. Those are the main ones, but those are usually about 3 or 4 30 minutes a week, and then about an hour one a week, and that's all usually based around Disney. And then I've just recently, in the last few months, on some recommendations from you, started listening to a different type of podcast where it will be an individual interviewing someone. And I usually tend to be more of somebody that I have to be interested in order to enjoy it. But so far, the Michael Rosenbaum, I learned about that one from you from listening to your podcast. I listen to your podcast, by the way, every single one of them.
Yeah, if you don't know, my wife is my biggest critic and also my biggest support.
I try to point out some good things too, but I also know that you want to know things that will help you get better. Right.
Part of the goal of this is to continue to get better and to continue to create this into being more than it is. I believe that everything can be grassroots grown, and all it takes is effort and commitment and, in a way, not repetitiveness. What's the predictability or on a schedule? Is that the consistency? Consistency is the thing. I mean, everybody, like when I started off, people were making a comment. You and my mom and several other people that started listening to it said, why don't you have the same music every time? That way it would be like as soon as it comes on, you're like, oh, here we go, this is it. And I was like, well, yeah, but like in the beginning, I was doing it through Anchor only, and I was clicking their music and using some of their stuff, and I didn't fully understand how to integrate it into GarageBand. I didn't know how to line up the music so that I could use something that was mine. I didn't want to use somebody else's music. I don't know how people get away with that. Like LeeAnn Kreischer, for example, she uses that song, I got a brand new pair of roller skates.
Which I like, by the way.
And I love her. I like that too, and I'm thinking, how does she get copyright okay for that to be her intro every time? But then you listen to people, like I listen to every once in a while, Joey Diaz. He has a podcast called The Church of What's Happening Now. And he starts every episode off where he's playing classic rock music on a radio, on a record player. And I'm like, okay, well, how is this okay as far as copyright goes? And yet, he does it every episode. He's like, oh, play this jam, and it'll be something off of the internet. And I'm like, surely copyright stuff has got to mess with him a lot, but he does it. And I thought, well, I can't do that because I'm not Joey Diaz. I'm not a celebrity. I'm not one of those people. And so, out of that birthed the idea of, why don't I just use some of this music I made on GarageBand as an intro, and that seems to be good. The consistency of it seems to be the part, I think, that everybody, as soon as they hear it, they go, oh, okay, here we go. Like the cow thing.
Yeah, I love the cow thing.
You made a comment about the cow.
The cow thing's my favorite part.
My mom even was like, oh, I love the cow at the end. You got to do the cow every time. And I'm like, really?
Yeah, I think
and y'all both told me that at the same time, and I was like, okay, they're listening and they like the cow, so we're going to keep the cow in.
It is really odd. Do you remember me telling you a couple of mornings ago about I had started your podcast while I was getting dressed, which I do listen to podcasts whenever I'm in the bathroom getting dressed, putting on makeup, blow drying my hair. And I happened to start listening to your podcast, and your podcast was still going, and I picked up my pocketbook and dropped my phone in my pocketbook, and you were still talking. And I actually laughed as I was going out the door, because I was thinking I am carrying my husband's voice in my pocketbook as I get in my car.
In a way, that's kind of weird because you think, all right, so,
he's always in my head. Why not be in my pocketbook?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm always with you no matter what, that I used to joke with my kids about the fact that in life, you're sometimes faced with obstacles and you think to yourself, all right, I got 2 ways I can solve this. I got this way or the other way. And this way, it's sort of like the cartoon of the devil and the angel on each shoulder, giving you suggestions. And I said, when I go to do something and I hear a voice in my head go, don't do that. That, to me, that was, some people say it's God, some people, say it's their conscience. I told the kids, I said, it's my mom telling me, don't do that. That's a dumb idea. But, I would often tell them stuff like that, and I'd say, don't do that, and hopefully in the future, if they go to do something stupid that's going to hurt them, they'll hear my voice in their head, and they'll go, oh yeah, Dad would be like, you're going to get hurt if you do that. And that's kind of the voice of reason, but in a way, the podcast has kind of turned into that as a continuation of that, of my ramblings and senses of humor and craziness and whatnot, and obsessions and all that fun stuff. But, anywho, so thank you for doing this.
Oh, you're welcome.
I know in the beginning when I was like, hey, you want to be on a podcast? You're like, go away from me. No.
No, and I don't want to do, I don't think I would be the kind of person that I could not do what you do and do this twice a week. I mean, I'm not saying that I'm not a person who can find something that I enjoy and stick with it, but I don't know that this would be...
What do you mean? You run.
No, I'm saying, but I don't think this would be something that I could stick with.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying, because I don't think I have that much to say. See, you're the kind of person who has things in your head you want to get out. I, on the other hand, don't.
Well, but okay, I get that, but also
I'm kind of glad you are talking to other people now. I'm not the one. Of course, I do listen to your podcast, so I am listening to it.
But also, like you talk a lot about, to me about a lot of the things you enjoy from things you learn about Disney and from the podcast about Disney, and then now that I've got you listening to LeeAnn Kreischer's podcast, Wife of the Party. Shout out to LeeAnn Kreischer. Thank you for getting me started with this, with the mention of Anchor FM.
I do love her podcast.
She's you learn a different side of who Bert is, but also you learn who LeeAnn is. And LeeAnn is a very interesting person.
She is. I knew way more about her husband, of course, because of listening to you. Not that I listen to his podcast, because I don't. And I don't listen to Joe Rogan's podcast. I'm not going to say there has been a few episodes that you've pointed out to me that I have listened to, and I've enjoyed them, but they're just not for me. Everybody's taste is different.
Yeah.
I'm not his interviews going a little too long for me. Mm-hmm. I'm more of the hour, just a little around an hour seems to suit me just fine. I like the conversation, and maybe it's because he just interviews people that are just so intelligent, so smart, that sometimes I get lost.
Joe, not Bert.
About Joe, not Bert. That I just get lost in the conversation.
Yeah. Well, and he talks about that a lot, about how, he just, in the beginning, just wanted to talk to his friends, and then after a while, he had scientists like, hey, I want to talk about, and he's like, I love science. Let's talk about this crazy thing.
And that's what interests him. The reason I like LeeAnn's podcast so much is because it's a lot of her podcasts are her sitting with her girlfriends talking about
real life stuff,
being moms,
depression,
being moms, raising children, in our middle ages. I am actually older than
midlife crisis, starting career over.
I absolutely love the
menopause
when she does her topic, when they get talking about menopause, and the fact that you listen to them.
Yeah.
I think helps a lot, because then you see you're hearing it from somebody other than me. Well,
and I think a lot of that has to do with being raised by a single mom a lot, because of having mom as my main influence growing up. I was taught early on that she's important, and her opinion is important, and that her voice is important, and other women's voices were important. The main people who were the influencers in my life were her and my grandmother, her mom.
Right.
And growing up, I was taught, hey, listen to everybody, because everybody's got an important point of view. Even though her dad was not someone who talked very much, he did everything by action. Like, you watch his actions and you learn from that. Generally speaking, in I guess our generation, the women have been the one who've sat around the table and communicated better. And have learned to communicate better and have conversations about feelings and about emotions and about relationships.
In general.
Right. But I I had a conversation with a friend of mine. Shout out to Josh Treadaway. I had a conversation with him about the fact that there's a statistic that men of our age commit suicide because they feel like they're not connected to other people. They have a hard time making friends. They have a hard time socializing. They're taught that they're not supposed to talk about their feelings. They're taught that they're not supposed to feel vulnerable. They use the phrase "man up" or don't be a wimp or don't be a girl or whatever. And women are more open about the fact of having conversations and let's talk about what we're going through because they understand that it's a shared kindredship and that sometimes they can help each other. And I think that's where, Bert talks about, I do my podcast because I want people to forget about their day and just laugh. And he says, you do your podcast because you want people to think about what's going on in their lives and you help people. And he said, to me, yours is more important than mine.
I wouldn't say, his is different. But hers would have to be interesting, though, in order for you for it to hold your attention.
Yeah,
because I've listened to some of my podcasts in the car. For our listeners, those that don't know this, when we drive, we listen to our podcast. Whoever has the steering wheel gets to choose the podcast. And if you are the passenger, you either put up with it or you put in some headphones.
You better have some material because if you run out, I'm taking over.
Yes. And my podcasts are only about 30 minutes, so I have to have some stockpiled in order to be able to have control of the radio for that time. But there's been times that we've been in a vehicle that you found what I found totally fascinating. It bored you to death.
Yeah.
But that also works with the same thing when there's been times that you've had your podcast on that I've either thoroughly enjoyed it or I've been completely out of tune with it and I've put my headphones on and listened to my own thing.
Yeah.
So, that...
Well, and there is a conversation out there for everybody. When I got started with this, it got started just with me trying to stay awake while I was driving. And my buddy Garth Blair, that I was in the Marine Corps with, he was the one that said, hey, you got to check out this Joe Rogan podcast where he interviews this comedian named Bert Kreischer. He tells this crazy story about robbing a train with the Russian mafia. That today is called The Machine Story. And if you don't know what it is, go on YouTube and check it out. It's hilarious. But it's also... It introduced me to a comedian that I really had never noticed before, but also had watched on TV before. He had a TV show on, and we had actually watched his show, Bert the Conqueror, when it was on, I think it was on like FX or Travel Channel or something like that.
I think it was.
And we had watched it and thought it was hilarious, and then it had gone off the air, and it was like, wait, I like this guy. I've seen him before, holy crap. And then he talked about being on the X show back in the day when the Man Show was popular. FX had just gotten started, and he had a show on there that was similar called The X Show, and he had been on that, and I watched that, and I had no idea that I had actually followed this guy's life without really knowing who he is. When that article came out in Rolling Stone magazine about him being the #1 party animal, I was getting Rolling Stone magazine in the Marine Corps, and I got that one because it had Biggie on the front, and it was talking about Biggie Smalls being killed, and I had that copy, and I read the article about him being the #1 party animal. I was thinking, God, this guy is crazy. Who would have thought that, these years later, it would have spiraled into me finding my first podcast, me getting inspired to listen to Joe's podcast, and listen to Bert's podcast, and listen to everybody else's podcast, because as guests come on, they'll start a conversation with other people, like listening to Michael Rosenbaum. He happened to be on Bert's and talking about, hey, thank you for doing my podcast. We should do a project together. And they were talking about doing something together. I had seen Michael Rosenbaum on Bert's YouTube channel, the All Things Comedy thing that he does with Bill Burr, where they did Something's Burning. They did an episode with him and Harlan Williams. And I thought they were hilarious all together. And
see, I don't see him. I watched him on Smallville.
Yeah.
I did not know he had a podcast, of course, until you told me.
I didn't either until that episode.
But
he was like, thanks for doing mine. And I was like, I got to check that out.
I've gone back through, I guess, all the way to his first podcast, and I've picked out the people that he's interviewed that I find interesting. Christian Bale, that one was so good. Dak Shepard, that one was great. Henry Winkler, I heard you talk about that one on your podcast. Fonz. I thought, no way, I just don't think I would find that one interesting. That was an incredible podcast.
He's like a guy you want to hug even though you've never met him.
I was completely blown away. I don't even know how long the podcast was. It could have went on for 4 hours for all I know, and I think I would have been interested in it the whole time. I'm listening to, as a matter of fact, as I was driving back from the gym, I'm listening to the Topher
Topher
Grace.
Grace.
Really good.
Fascinating
I mean,
guy.
really
Yeah.
good. I mean, I watched him on the 70s show and loved him on that. I did not realize he has done as many films as he's done.
Well, and the crazy part is like, a conversation like that, which is why I think the popularity of podcasts is here, is that
They're more real.
you can't have
It's
a
not
real
like
conversation on TV because you have a 6-minute
Right.
window to talk about everything, and we got to go to break, and then when you come back, we're going to watch this elephant jump off a skydive. Like what? I wanted to hear more of the conversation, and the podcast thing is more of a conversation thing, which
right.
people like to be a part of.
Where they're talking more about their being frustrated because they have a new baby and hadn't slept in days.
Yeah.
So I mean, you realize, just like listening to Kristen Bell talk about.
Yeah, we all go through it. I mean, especially if you're a parent, you
Right.
go through that kind of stuff, and it's like, hey, I hit a button. I gotta go back here. That kind of stuff, and it's like I hit a button and accidentally hit the stop button on my recording. Okay, we're back. Sorry.
Technical difficulties.
I'm learning. It's Special Ed John. She's doing a good job. Sorry, that was me pretending to be someone else. Anyway,
Josh.
So, yeah, fair enough. I did this past week with a guy that I work with, Champ Lambert.
Now I have not listened to that one yet because I've been so wrapped up in listening to several Disney podcasts and listening to Michael Rosenbaum's podcast because I'm trying to catch up.
Yeah.
Because I had to go back to his, episode 1 and pick out the ones that I wanted to listen to.
Right. Well, yeah, and he talked about the fact before we got started that he was nervous and that he just wanted to kind of do this one to get the experience of doing it. And I'm always nervous about asking people to be on this because of the fact that
You asked me 1,000,000 times.
Well, no, because I feel like you would be a natural. I mean,
no, not at all.
You're a natural conversationalist.
You just think because I listened to other podcasts that I would.
No, because
this is your birthday present, by the way.
Yeah, happy birthday to me. I'm 45, by the way. Yay, happy birthday. No, I mean, to me, like, I can do this and I can talk to people and I can interview folks. You're still the one person I want to talk to more than anybody.
Aw.
I mean, we've been married.
I love you too.
We've been married 14 years, but, when we're older and all we can do is sit around and talk to each other, you're still the person I want to talk to. I like your voice. I like your thoughts. I like the way your brain works. I like the fact that you and I can converse, even though we've been married 14 years, and still have an enjoyable conversation and make each other laugh. And that's that's irreplaceable. And so, to have you on this is, to me, is
but this is your thing.
Fluid.
This is your thing.
True.
And
But it's
we
also-
both have our.
But because it's been part of our lives together, like the YouTube thing started off as just me obsessing with
Yes, but
camera.
I'm not on that much YouTube. The only YouTube stuff that I'm on is vacations
And running.
and running. But I mean, I try hard to stay out because I'm not the one in
Right.
the garage doing the projects.
No, but
I'm the one putting up with the dust from the projects.
But you're more
which
comfortable
is fine,
now.
But
the dust, you hear that?
the dust from the projects.
I told you about my obsession with building stuff, and now this is I love you.
Yeah, I know.
Thank you for putting up with my crazy obsessions.
Our garage has been rearranged so many times. I don't know how you could rearrange it anymore.
Listen, it could be worse. I could be into like some really crazy stuff.
I know, that's why
this
I'm
is a
just
healthy obsession. I got
go
a
with
beautiful
the flow.
chair we could sit in any time, and it's beautiful. Even your mom was like, "I want one." I'm like, "Okay." I don't know that I can just crank them out here, but
No, we're not starting a production,
chair making business.
a production assembly line.
We could
out
call
in the
it.
garage.
We could
No.
call it. Josh don't know what he's doing. .com, and I don't know if that's out there, but maybe I should start looking for it online. Josh don't know what he's doing.com, and then we just take off from there. And everything I do can just be lumped into that because I don't know. And I say that because I want to not only to add humility to this thing of saying thank you to everybody who's listened over the last year. This is the 1 year anniversary. This is episode 104. Thank you to everybody who has shared this podcast. Thank you to all the guests that have been on. Greg Steele has been on a few times.
You've done this on vacations.
I've done this on vacations. Just
so you wouldn't. I mean, and I have more than once said, if you skip one, it's okay. But no, you were adamant about 2 per week.
Right. I felt like there was a
You felt
diagram.
like you had enough to say.
not only that, but
that you needed to for a week.
I listened to Chris Hardwick talk about the fact of, he said, if you don't stay consistent with something like this, people forget about you.
Oh, I agree. I mean, if you don't stay consistent, period. I mean,
yeah.
People go to the gym. I happen to be somebody that has gotten into that in the latter part of my life. I did not go as a 20-year-old, 30-year-old like I should have. I waited until I was well into my late 40s before I ever even thought about it.
And now you're in the best shape of your life.
And now I'm in the best shape of my life, and I love the gym. I mean,
but it's the consistency that's made the difference.
Right.
You know, and he talked about that, and he's right. Like, if you're consuming something, let's say you have like your favorite TV show that you like watching. Oh, I love this TV show. And then they move it from the time slot back. This is talking to people who used to watch things in their time slots and not stream everything. But if they move the time slot, you'd be like, where'd my show go? And you'd lose your show. Like, it was just gone. And with streaming ideas, it's sort of the same thing. If you don't stay consistent with putting out content, nobody's going to keep tuning in.
Well, that's exactly right, because I had one Disney podcast that I listened to that was only about 20, 30 minutes, but the guy was so inconsistent that I just deleted him off of my library because he was just eating up space. I mean, because it would go 2 months, 3 months sometimes before he would put out something, and I was like, this is just... I keep finding myself wasting my time flipping to his actual... Is it called a station? Is it what is it? Whenever a channel? Okay, maybe. I would pull, wanting to know when the next one. Did I miss a download? And I just finally deleted him because he was not consistent.
That's one of the things I wish that iTunes would do a little better. Is when you go to bring up your podcast, it only brings up the 6 that you've listened to lately, or the 6 most recent. And sometimes I look for others to go, hey, I want to listen to these other ones, but their menu only holds 6, and that's kind of a pain in the neck. Because I would listen to a lot more if I had the option of keeping them in that queue instead of having to go re-find them and re-download them.
Right, yeah, I agree with that.
I wish that was a little
I'm sure
better.
That's something that'll get better as...
Well, and a lot of people listen to this on Spotify, so maybe Spotify's a little better about that. I don't know.
Is that something we could download on our phone?
Yeah, it's just an app. I've been nervous about doing it because I know that Spotify is one of those things that you have a subscription base sometimes.
I was going to say, do you think eventually... I know I like podcasts because... I drive a lot.
Yep.
With what I do for my job.
Yep.
I'm in the car a lot.
Same.
And moving from area to areas, radio stations don't come in, and you either have to find something or you just turn it off. So podcast, or you could pay XM, which I'm not going to do. So I started with podcasts, and with podcasts, you get to listen to what you want to listen to when you want to listen to it.
Not only that, but it's a conversation that gets you engaged.
Right.
More than just a song that you've heard on repeat for the every 5th song that's on.
But it's just like reading a book for me, though. If I download one based on somebody's recommendation, mostly your recommendation, but if I download one and then I listen to it for a couple of minutes, if I'm not into it within that first couple of minutes, I'm pretty much out.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't give it another shot. Where the Michael Rosenbaum one, it got me from the very beginning.
Well, he's got a good speaking voice.
He's got a good voice.
Plus, he knows how to move the show in the right
Plus, he's interviewing some
pace.
Fantastic people.
He has great friends that come on and do the podcast with him. He asks some really funny questions. He's got a good sense of humor.
He does.
His impressions of several people is great, but his Sly Stallone impression, I think, is the best.
He's good.
But yeah, I mean, it's finding that thing that you like listening to. And I'm overwhelmed that in this year, from starting from 0 to today, I mean, let me just open up my phone and look, because I talked about this.
Now, one thing you do that I do not do is you're great at leaving comments, and I should do that because that's how somebody who has a podcast knows if they are being well received.
Right.
And I don't take the time to do that because I just don't do it. I should do it. You do a really good job, and I guess maybe you got in the habit of that with your YouTube.
With YouTube, yeah.
Because you do respond a lot of times to people on YouTube.
Because let's say you're someone big like Casey Neistat on YouTube. He's got over 12 million subscribers. He's not replying to everybody.
No, he's probably got staff that
He's
replies.
probably rarely even going on it. But when he got started, he replied to everybody.
Right.
Because he could. LeeAnn Kreischer talks about that on her podcast and on her YouTube channel.
That she
replies to everybody.
That she reads every single email.
And she does. If you write her an email at wifeotp,
I have.
she writes you back, and it's usually a good, well-written letter. Like, she takes it seriously. She realizes that her audience is writing her for a reason, and she's humble in the fact that she understands that they're taking time out of their day to do that. Hang on, I gotta reset this camera. This is the one part about it I gotta change. Is the camera part. Because the camera...
Your financial advisor
for 30
has
minutes.
Advised you to get another camera.
Well, I got it in the wish list. I'm not gonna pull that trigger just yet, because I'm nervous.
To spend money? Not you.
Well, I mean, we've been spending a lot of money on stuff, you know, new tires for the truck and new laptop and soon to be new stucco for the front of the house because it's all torn down. But
it's just money. We can't take it with us.
What I was saying about the fact that it's been a year. Okay, so I went from nobody listening to today, 1 year later, 23.4 thousand plays. People have listened to this podcast, and I just
can't imagine anybody listening to them twice. So that's I'm sorry. You know I love you, right? That's that many people, or that many times that the video. Okay, you've got 100.
This is just through the Anchor app.
103 videos as of your last one, right?
Yeah.
Because this is 104.
Yeah.
That's better than I would have
thought. So
thought.
from nothing to 23.4. This is just through Anchor. This is not through iTunes and everybody else.
Well, I know that
this
the
is
YouTube
just through
portion
Anchor.
of it. I mean, just the YouTube. I never doubted when you started this that you would be good at it, because I've looked at what you've done with your YouTube.
Yeah.
And you know, and our running joke is, you know, his tens of dollars, because he does let Google advertise, and when you let Google advertise, they do send you a little bit of money, and it's
not enough to quit my job.
It's not. We have a running joke that when it's enough for him to quit his day job, then we'll discuss it. But it's also tens of dollars is how we describe it. But those tens of dollars
it adds up.
It's definitely grown over the years.
Yeah, and it's allowed us to purchase better equipment to continue this to improve.
Right.
You know, if you don't invest in yourself, then you're not really, you know, in my opinion, you're doing a disservice to everybody else. You know, if you have an audience that enjoys listening to you and you have a vocal platform, you know, buy better microphones. If you have a platform that watches you on camera, buy better cameras. It can all be part of it. You just have to spend the money in order to grow.
Oh, it's definitely
what you're doing.
More money going out than comes in.
Yeah.
But we knew that going into it.
But I'm still amazed at the 23.4 thousand listens through Anchor.
I'm shocked.
Through Anchor, just Anchor.
I thought you were going to say 2,300. I'm sorry. I mean, just being honest.
Well, if you think about that, from 0 to 2,300 is still a lot.
That's a lot, especially for 103 episodes, right?
Yeah.
But to say 23,000, I'm completely shocked.
And that's, like, I think I talked about it last week. I took a picture online of what it was before I recorded last week's episode. Last week it was 22.7 thousand. And this week is 23.4 thousand. So I've had 700,000. Is that right? No. 7,000. 7,000.
7,000.
I've had 7,000 plays between last week. Between last week and now. And I
need more guests.
I can't say thank you enough. I mean, I've had a lot of people on here. Byron Covington I work with, who's been on here as a guest. He's going to come back on and do some more. Right away, he was an early adopter and a person who immediately started sharing the podcast with a lot of people. You know, Greg Steele, my buddy from when I grew up, you know, as a young man. I've had some of my friends, Josh West and Josh Treadaway, and I think even Roddy made an appearance slightly on one of the podcasts when we were at the beach. I've had my brother on several times, Alex Smith. He's a coach.
Your mom?
My mom's been on. My dad's been on a couple times. My sister's been on a couple times.
I love listening to the ones with her.
A lot of people commented they really like listening to Brandy talk.
Yeah, she has a great voice. She has a great voice.
Not only that, but she's a good conversationalist.
She's very good conversationalist.
She's got info. Like, she's, you know, being raised in the same household, we were always challenged. We talk about this a little bit between the two of us about how when you were raised in our house, you sat down at the dinner table, you either had to be loud or funny, or you were just skipped over in our conversation. But you had to be the one that sort of controlled conversation. So you better come with an idea and you better have something ready because it's
all a loud bunch.
Yeah, but it was that's where we had our conversations, because we had lives that were in all directions all the time. But when you stepped up to the table, it's like, hey, by the way, I got this thing I want to tell you, and you sort of held court, and so I guess all of that comes natural. I know that I've skipped over a lot of things about what I normally talk about, because this is the stuff I heard podcast.
So tell me what you've heard since Wednesday.
I'm going to run down a list here, okay? I'm just going to kind of blast through this. But on Netflix, there's a show called Dead to Me with Christina Applegate. I've recommended that you watch it.
I want to watch it, but I'm not a TV person. I will get around to it
good.
Sooner or later.
It's so good. It's some of the best content that I've seen them put out, probably since 13 Reasons Why. I mean, it's fantastic. Is it
sad and depressing? I don't want to watch sad and depressing.
No.
Okay, I mean we
watched HBO's Big Little Lies.
That was a good one.
Okay, I
can't wait for that one to come out.
This is a not as sad version of that, but with a twist. It's a very interesting twist of a show that when it's revealed what's going on, you're like, wait, what? Holy cow! And it's one of those that, Christina Applegate, let's face it, she was an A-list star on every platform, and it seems to be the thing now that Netflix is just picking up these people who want to make good content, but aren't given the green light to do it in a normal media movie type scenario.
Well, did you listen to the podcast of Michael Rosenbaum and Tom Welling, where he talked about how the difference between doing what he did with Smallville for regular network, and then whenever he got offered the part on Lucifer, after Lucifer got picked up by Netflix, and he talked about how it was fantastic, and even Michael Rosenbaum was completely blown away by listening to him talk about how much he enjoyed the difference in the filming and everything about what goes into those shows now for the streaming service.
And it sort of has a hands-off approach from Netflix. They're just like, hey, just make good content.
Yeah.
We're a media sharing platform.
I don't miss cable.
You make good stuff, and we'll put it on. And this, you can tell this show Dead to Me is one of those that someone had an idea and they said, we just want money to make it, and they said, here, go make it.
Well, I'll check it out.
And it's fantastic. I also watched a movie this past week that they had made called Free State of Jones with Matthew McConaughey, and I had seen this thing advertised, and in it there's a guy with scruffy hair and a beard, and he's in a wagon, and he's talking to this other fella and who's walking beside him. And
is this the Civil War one?
Yeah.
Okay, I saw bits and pieces of that.
And I was watching watching that little segment of them having a conversation. He kept telling him during the Civil War, and he kept telling him. He said if you do this, they'll kill you and they'll arrest me, but they'll kill you. And he's like trying to get him to stop doing something, and I'm like, what is this? So I watched it, and it was done great. There is a weird break as you're watching it where they sort of flash forward to like the 1980s in a court case.
No, 60s, wasn't it?
Was it 60s?
I think 60s.
And you're like, what does this got to do with anything?
Well, because segregation was still
back,
a big thing.
Segregation was still a big thing in Mississippi, where they wouldn't.
That's what this guy was on trial for, right?
Yeah, they wouldn't honor the fact that he had some 1/8 slave. They called it Negro blood, and they wouldn't allow him to get married to a white girl, and he was arrested for it.
He had actually married her, right?
He married her, but in the courthouse that he was being tried for, and they said that they were not only not going to allow his marriage, and he looked like a regular white dude, but he just happened to have a mixed bloodline. But they had found it out, and it was a big scandal, and they arrested him and put him in jail, and he spent 5 months in jail. And
it was good. I actually watched it over the top of my Kindle because I read a lot.
The writing was good, the acting was good, and Matthew McConaughey. I tell you, since he did the Dallas Buyers Club and the True Detective series on HBO, his acting level has just gone up notches. I mean, he did what is the science fiction one, Interstellar. Mm-hmm. His acting is just on a different level now. Like he is, you forget he's the guy from the.
Oh, that True Detective was one of the most incredible.
He's not that guy anymore.
Right.
Like in this one. There's moments in this one where he's a badass, and you're like, dude, I never saw you as being that guy, but holy cow, you've encapsulated this. And I know, like personally, he's a father now, and he's embraced this, parenthood thing, and he's probably, he's grown up, and in a mindset like he's become a better actor because of it. We talked loosely about the fact that Lucifer has been picked up on Netflix. Fox had this show on TV, and it got canceled after 3 seasons. And I thought that was the end of it, but there was a big thing online where people were petitioning for the show to come back. Well, Netflix just picked them up. They were just like, you know what, this was a good show. Let's give them a shot. So they recorded season 4, and it's up now. I haven't gotten there yet. I'm watching season 3, still trying to catch up. This past, since we talked last, I listened to Dr. Drew After Dark's podcast. He had episode 13 with Pete Holmes. Pete Holmes has his own podcast called You Made It Weird. And I love Pete Holmes' podcast. I can listen to him talk to just about anybody. He has a
one of my favorites. That's one of those when you're in the car, I have to tune that one out.
Oh, this is a good conversation because Pete Holmes has been on this journey of self-realization and growth and trying to figure out who he is and becoming a good comedian and becoming more comfortable on stage and becoming now a father. He recently got married and they had a kid and he is a good conversationalist and reads a lot and always tries to better himself through learning about new ways of thinking about just about anything. But this is a good conversation that they have together. If you enjoy Dr. Drew or Pete Holmes or just curious, go check that out. Also, LeeAnn Kreischer's podcast, Wife of the Party, episode 67 just came out this week. There's one on credit where she has, she has a conversation with 2 people who are financial experts, and they talk about all the aspects of credit, about how to start credit, about how to manage credit, about how to get yourself out of financial problems whenever you have, let's say you have a bankruptcy or you have to repair your credit. They give a lot of good advice.
I have not listened to that one. That's my next one with her. I'm current on, except for the credit one. It
was so good. The advice part of it was so good. There was parts of it I thought, God, I wish I'd have known this years ago. This would have really helped me repair my credit. And I enjoyed it so much, and I thought it would be so useful to somebody else. I immediately sent it out to a few people and said, you got to check this out. I'll
have to listen.
This will change the way that you're thinking about repairing your credit. I also listened to Bert on the Bertcast, episode 342 this past week with Diamond Dallas Page and Vance Hines. Now, a lot of people may know Vance Hines from television. He's had viral YouTube videos go out where he started off at 475 pounds.
Oh, I remember this one.
And he listened to a podcast where Bert and Tom Segura and...
It's the one where Bert ran the marathon?
Yeah.
And it's how this guy got interested in...
They were doing Sober October, and they were talking about, Bert's like, I'm going to challenge myself to run a marathon. And
I actually saw it on Facebook, I believe.
And so he was like, if Bert can do it, then I can lose some weight. And it just spurred him to make a decision.
And he recorded himself.
He videoed himself
like
every day
or every week or something like that. His weight loss.
He constantly put it up on social media.
Was the other gentleman on the podcast the one that he worked with for his
DDP?
For his working out?
I think he was. Yeah, I think Diamond Dallas Page somehow got involved somewhere during the process.
Giving him some
he talks
tips
about
on...
it. He talks about it because he went from 475 to like 430. And that's when he reached out on social media and says, I could use some help because this is all I know.
I think he started off just basically walking, and if I remember seeing the video,
and cutting back on his carbs,
and he actually started walking by himself, and then 1 or 2 people joined him, and then the next thing you know, he's holding up his phone, and he's got like all these people behind him,
and he started talking about the fact that up until that point. He had always said no to things when people would say, "Hey, we want you to go work out with us. We want you to go, walk with us. We want you to go try this class with us." And he would always say no. And he said, "I finally realized the power of saying yes to things." And I said, and people would ask me, "Hey, do you want to go meet at 5 a.m. to do this thing?" He's like, "Sure."
Well, a lot of it has to do with having.
It's a mindset.
It is a mindset, but I'm not by myself. If I had to go to the gym by myself every day, 6 days a week, I probably would not go. The reason I go is because I have made some incredible friends.
But in the beginning, it was you by yourself.
No, actually, I got invited by a friend to come to a class. Matter of fact, she was one of your high school friends.
Oh, yeah, Zelina. Yeah.
And she invited me to come to a class, and that's how I got started.
Well, in this podcast...
So it does, it works in numbers.
They talk a lot about his process and about how he got hooked up with Diamond Dallas Page, who was a former pro wrestler. He talks about his journey from... being 35 years old and getting into wrestling, about having a back injury, about learning stuff about yoga from his girlfriend at the time, and then modifying it and developing his own plan, which is the DDP yoga. Apparently there's an app that you can download that's got this whole process of things, and he says he goes at it from every angle. Basically, he's helped people who are stuck in bed and unable to get out of bed to then being able to get into a chair, to then being able to get out of the chair. He's helped people who are disabled learn to be able to walk again through exercise and through strengthening and through his program. And he talks a lot about it. It's a fascinating podcast.
I know that's a podcast of Bert's I may have to listen to.
It is good. It is. When you listen to DDP talk, his voice is a little raspy, and he talks about the fact that he's done 85 interviews in the last 3 weeks. So his voice is kind of blown out, and he's sort of like, you can hear him like grasping for breath as he's talking, because his voice is just blown out. But a lot of good information, a lot of good heart. And one of the things I got away from it was he talked about how, he said, the way I approach this is I realize that this is all about community, and that if I help people around me succeed, it'll only help me succeed.
Yeah.
And that approach,
I'll listen to that one.
That approach has been something that I was an early adopter of. That's something that I learned from listening to Joe Rogan talk on his podcast and listening to Casey Neistat on YouTube. Is you don't need anyone's permission to do anything, and you can build community. All it takes is consistency and effort. That's all it takes. Who would have thought that me going to one of my favorite taco places, King Hefe, would end up being a friendship between me and Kyle Hardy? I mean, just consistency and effort. And he reached out one day. He's like, "Hey, I love the podcast, by the way, and I want to be on." And I'm like, "All right."
You love that guy more than you love me. He's like right up there.
Well, I mean,
King Hefe is like right up there at the top. You could eat there every single day.
Listen, I could have a special friendship with him, but it'll never replace what I have with you.
I'm not jealous at all.
But I mean, it's community. We're building community, and through our shared interests, or not even shared interests, but I guess it's shared. But in a way, we can sort of build community between us, and then help other people come to all of us together. And it's sort of like an open pathway to anybody out there who's into this kind of stuff, who knows any of us. It's like, hey, if you start something and want to be part of something, and you have some effort and some energy and some drive, we can grow something together. But I say that, and then I'm also quick to realize the fact that I listened to a podcast with Michael Rosenbaum where he interviewed Maria Menendez.
Yeah, you were on that podcast whenever I started My Topher Grace, because somehow our whole podcast thing is mixed up with iTunes. So
she was an MTV personality who,
I know who she is.
At some point in her life was sort of parenting, or as a daughter was having her mom go through a brain tumor, and in that process realized that she had a brain tumor. And she talks about her journey and what she went through with that. But one of the things that struck out to me in the conversation was the fact that she said, I've lived a life of doing, and at a certain point during this tumor and during this recovery, I realized I am putting too much effort in doing and not enough in being. I'm not being present. And I thought, there is a balance there. Like, we listened to, we got started watching Casey Neistat on YouTube videos, and he talks about how he takes breaks once in a while to be with his family. And he said, I realized that I was obsessing about this camera and about talking to my audience, and I wasn't engaging with the one audience that matters the most, which is my family. And
well, that's true, but also for him, it is his living. Yeah. This is not your living. We focus more on our work because we're at that job. Life. I mean, we're at that job all day long, Monday through Friday. I mean, and more for some people. But for him, I could see where he could get even more consumed in it because it's his income. It's his income.
Yeah.
And so he probably was focusing on the camera all the time.
Right. But he was doing one a day. Like his vlog was one a day. So all of that content that he was putting out was every day, consistently.
Well, I mean, but if it's your job, then I mean, you think about the fact that the hours that you spend or I spend at a job. So I mean, I could see where that probably too. And he tries to keep his family a little more private from in front of the camera. So that probably would be difficult, especially if you're putting out content every single day. And he was putting out content. 30 minutes, anywhere, he was doing at least 30 minutes and sometimes up to an hour. Yeah. And you think about the fact that he was editing a good portion, he edits a good portion of that, so that camera is continuously running, and he's trying to keep his family out of it. So he was probably hiding more from his family.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
So I can get that.
Yeah. And he's trying to be conscious of the fact of, not to include like his daughter's face and stuff. And
Right.
now that they have the new baby, he's like, I'll show some stuff when the baby's little, but after that, like I don't want them to be part of that
Right.
life because they didn't sign up for that. And then Joe talks about that on his podcast. He says, people ask him all the time, how does your family deal with celebrity? And he says they don't. He said, I tell everybody if they're going to come around and take pictures, don't bother my family.
I don't think you got to worry. I mean, I'll keep you grounded. Don't worry about it.
I'm not going to be that big, but
I'll keep you grounded, babe.
But there is an element of the reality of 23,000 listens on one stupid app.
You're putting a lot
in 1 year.
You're putting a lot of what's in your head out on social media.
Right. And for a lot of people are very private, and they're like, I don't want anybody to know how I feel. I don't want anybody to understand what goes in my stupid head. And there's a lot of this.
That I'm that way. I just don't feel like I'm interesting.
Well, there's a lot of this that I don't talk about. There's a lot of the like I have a lot of negative thoughts, just like anybody else does. And I'm like, that's not for here. That's more for Twitter because people are angry and pissed off on Twitter.
I don't tweet.
but even then, like I understand the fact that I have kids and I have a grandson now, and I don't want to put out a bunch of crap that they're going to be like, really? Why would you be that guy?
Well,
Plus,
you're not
my
a
mom,
negative person anyway.
My mom's out. I am.
No, you're not at all.
I can be.
Everybody can be, but I mean, overall in general, no, you are not a negative person.
Well, see, that's one of the things that Greg said. Is Greg mentioned that too? He said, I'm impressed with the fact that no matter what's come up in your life, he said you've never been like, well, crap, like Eeyore. He said you've always been like,
no, you do not have that mentality at all.
Let's figure out what we got to do here because this isn't going to go away, and I got to do something, so I might as well get involved and figure it out. And,
you're a very positive person.
It's drive from watching people around me. It's drive from family and people that I see succeed. Adam Carolla talks about this on his podcast. He said, at a certain part of my life, I realized I had a bunch of burner friends, and either I choose to continue with that path and be friends with those people, or I make better friends. I make friends with people who are succeeding, and I realize that if I want my life to succeed, I need to be around a better type of person that has
you live with
more goals of what I want.
Just kidding.
But it's true. Like
I don't think you've ever been the kind of person that surrounded yourself with people that would drag you down.
No.
I mean, you're friends with the same group of guys from high school that are incredible.
But
not many people can say what you can say at your age. Not that you're old by any means, but the core group that you've got, that you have been friends with since high school, you guys stay in touch. I mean, you're not in touch every single day. You're not in touch every single week, but you guys always make it a point to stay in touch. To every couple of years, you plan something to get together. I mean, very few people can say that about a core group of, 5 guys? 5?
Let's see, me, Greg, Josh West, Josh Treadaway, Rodney. It's 5.
Yeah, so the 5 of you have done an incredible job of staying in touch.
Yeah.
And you enjoy that.
Well, yeah, but it's weird because I talked about this before, but we met under really strange circumstances and somehow made a friendship that didn't make any sense.
Well,
and in a way, I've always been drawn to people who are a little bit different than me because I'm curious
you're a very
about
diverse group, yes. But just the fact that the 5 of you have managed to stay in touch.
Yeah.
I mean, because I can honestly say I am. Now, don't get me wrong. I have friends on Facebook that I went to high school with, and that kind of stuff. But as far as being friends with them, no. I mean, I go to class reunions. We sit and chat. That's about it.
Yeah.
I have no idea what's going on with them, like you are with your, the guys that you went to high school with.
Right.
That core group that has stayed friends.
And I think a lot of it was the time, the age during that.
Oh, a lot of it's effort.
Yeah.
I mean,
but also
of the 5 of you, some of you put in more effort than others.
Yeah.
But of the ones that do, you have a tendency not to let the ones that seem to get more wrapped up in their day-to-day lives and you hadn't heard from them, you will reach out to them.
Yeah.
So I mean,
and we all understand that we're busy at times,
right?
And it's there, it's not like taking it personal, like how come you didn't call me back? It's like, hey, I know you're busy. Hey, when you get a chance, give me a call. I want to just I just want to talk to you.
But I think that's incredible. I've always had a lot of respect for the friendship that you guys have.
Well, you know, I used to think that you get out of life what you put into it, and that everything, you know, you reap what you sow kind of mentality. That's good and positive. You know, if you're an asshole to everybody, then everybody's going to treat you like an asshole. If you're nice to everybody, then hopefully everybody will treat you nice. That doesn't always play out that way. It just worked out in this scenario. And it was also the time where, you know, our parents worked and we were kind of left to our own devices a little bit, and we had freedoms.
Back in the good old days.
We had freedoms.
Yeah.
Like we could come and go, and we could, you know, as long as we weren't into trouble, I mean, we were kind of allowed to venture out and spend time with one another. And our parents, like, would touch base with us and learn who our friends were, and sort of understood that we weren't really getting into any trouble. We were just hanging out, and it was innocent. And I'm thankful that we didn't go down like a dark path, because we very well could have. But we really just enjoyed hanging out with each other. So I can see you looking at the time.
I know this is like the longest podcast you've ever done.
No, I think I did an hour and a half with Greg.
Oh, okay, there we go.
I did 15 minutes with Kyle. I mean, you know, conversation is what it is. Listen, I told you this was going to be smooth. I want to run down this real quick though, because I listened to. I keep
sidetracking you. I'm so sorry.
No, it's fine. That's how this works.
This train runs off the track.
I listened to several Joe Rogan podcasts, and I definitely want to talk about these. Episode 1291, he talked to C.T. Fletcher. C.T. Fletcher is a former bodybuilder. He holds a world record for bench press. He talks about how he had a heart transplant from a young lady, or he says young lady, she's younger than he was, but how the size didn't really match up, and that it transformed within a week to fill in the space that it needed. And he talks about how his journey has been, and how his heart before had a pacemaker, and he actually flatlined 5 times before he had a heart transplant.
Had a heart transplant.
Yep.
And now he's a bodybuilder?
He's a former bodybuilder.
So
he's still working out, but he doesn't push himself like he used to. He can't.
Gotcha,
Right now he's just getting into working out a little bit, lifting weights.
Now, when was the transplant?
I don't know exactly when.
Oh, okay.
But it's a good conversation.
Oh, that sounds fascinating.
It's a fascinating conversation. This guy looks like, he looks like the Hulk. He's a human Hulk. But he talks about his journey and how, you know, the heart transplant has kind of changed his life and changed his passion, and he wants to help other people understand how important it is to be an organ donor. And
I'm an organ donor. Are you an organ donor?
I am an organ donor. Or I donate my organ and all the... never mind. Just sorry, that was the inside joke.
That part.
So, episode 1292, Joe did a podcast with Lex Friedman. He is a human-centered... He talks about human-centered self-driving or self-automated vehicles and stuff like that. And they talk a lot about Tesla, and they talk about the dangers of letting things drive for you, and how...
Oh, that's in your wheelhouse.
Oh, yeah.
I don't find that interesting at all.
I'm obsessed with that kind of stuff. But he talks about how every now and then the technology fails, and you need to always be on the ready. They got into a discussion about how people, when they drive, tend to use their cell phones, and how they can, you know, the distracted part of it can lead to more accidents. And he said the weird part is the statistics have shown that lately those numbers have gotten much better because people have gotten better at texting and driving. And he said that's the scary part, is if you relinquish that control of your vehicle to be self-automated and self-driving, you're going to lose that part of your brain that has you multifunctioning to the point that you can control everything. And if the car has some type of fail, you're not going to be ready to take over. Whereas right now, the way our brains are dialed up...
So the car is self-driving,
yeah,
but yet you have to be alert enough to take over. What's the point?
What do you mean?
I get Tesla. Don't get me wrong. I get Tesla.
This is the step. This is just the first step.
I get Tesla with the whole you don't need gas, and don't get me wrong. I do not understand. I do not follow that, so I don't understand that. It's all battery powered, I guess. You don't need gas. I get that part. The self-driving thing I don't get. If you've got to be alert, what's the point?
Well, because this is the first step. Like, the automation is not fully 100% flawless. So this is the part of it where you have to keep some pressure on the steering wheel so that it knows you're there and you're alert. And they're selling things now that you can adapt to put on your steering wheel.
Why pay more for a vehicle that you have to do that with?
Well, no, all you gotta do is have a hand on it. They just want you aware. And you don't have to touch it fully. Like you've seen the videos where Casey's driving and doing videos, and he's totally hands-free because he's holding the camera and he's talking about another thing, and the thing's driving itself. But every once in a while, he has to touch the steering wheel just so it knows that you are there and you're aware that the car is moving.
What, that you haven't left the car?
Well, that you haven't fallen asleep. there's slight problems, but it's getting better. It's getting better. So
I'd
anyway,
say that's your wheelhouse. I'm sure you loved that podcast.
It was good. I was into it. I was all into it. Episode 1294 I'm listening to now is with Jamie Metzel. He just wrote a book called Hacking Darwin. And he talks a lot about AI and how AI is going to integrate with humans and how it's really going to change things. And he is... Hang on, I got to reset the stupid camera. Again, this is like a constant thing. I'm going to have to buy another camera.
You're going to have to buy another camera.
Or I'm going to have to hire an engineer to reset my duty.
Dollars will not support one of those.
My tens of dollars.
Your tens of dollars. No, sir.
An engineer.
You need to buy a new camera. I think somebody's been saying get a new camera.
I need a Jamie. I'd be like, Jamie, pull that up.
No.
From Joe Rogan.
No.
But no, he talks about how AI is going to integrate with humans and how we're going to, we need to be on the forefront of having discussions. And he's on these councils now where he's meeting with world leaders where they can discuss the fact that we are, China is one of the front runners in altering DNA to change the way people advance and how they're, starting off with eliminating diseases. But at some point they're going to get to where they decide your hair color and your eye color and your proclivity to being a certain height and that kind of thing. And he's like, we need to have the conversations now so that we can discuss what's going to happen in the future. And they talk about the growth of AI and the dangers of AI and how at some point it's going to be self-learning and self-teaching and it's going to advance at a rate that is unmeasurable. Imagine that you create a consciousness that's all on a computer and it allows itself to learn at an exponential rate that doesn't get tired and doesn't know when to slow down. That's frightening. I mean, that's science fiction-y kind of stuff, which he wrote a book, and he's talking about the book, but it also has a lot of science in it to the point that people are taking notice, and people want him on these councils where they discuss it, because it's part of the conversation. So
I just don't find that kind of stuff interesting.
No, but
now, if I had to listen to a podcast like that, I would fall asleep.
To me, it's fascinating because it is going to be part of our reality. Just how, think about my grandmother, okay? She just passed away at 91 years old. When she was a child, it was 1927, cars were just starting to be a thing people owned. Roads weren't around. Cities weren't what they were.
Right.
We definitely didn't have television like it is, and we didn't have cell phones, and we didn't have supercomputers on our watches and all that other stuff. Drones that fly through the air and can record at 4K.
Right.
And in 91 years, that's what's happened. Think about your life when you were a kid. You got to, in your life, know of people going to the moon.
That was before I was...
No.
I was 2.
They still went to the moon.
Well, yeah.
In your life.
In my life, yes.
I think 12 people have been to the moon between 1969 and 1972. 12 people. The last time anybody went to the moon was 1972. But still... People went to the moon in your lifetime for the first time.
I was 8 in 72.
For the first time.
Right.
And now, I mean, holy cow, the advancements in technologies that we've seen.
True.
You had a black and white TV when you were a kid, right?
Yes.
Okay. And now we've got streaming.
Second grade we got color.
Now we got streaming digital service everywhere. Like we can watch Netflix on our phones. And it's crazy. I mean, we can be in a totally different city and pull up our account and watch our shows that we were watching and be like, oh, this is where I left off. Cool.
Yeah, but it's still just hard to fathom that you can pick what your baby is going to be.
I know.
What color eyes it will have, what color hair.
It is.
I mean, that's just...
But that's part of his conversation is we need to have that conversation of at what point do we go, whoa, that's too much. Because he talks about how the randomization of things is kind of what makes the human race what it is now is our random mishaps that sort of make us better. He said, think about it. If you could genetically say, I want everybody to be 6 foot tall, and I want everybody to run this fast, and I want everybody to be this, and I want everybody to be that, that would be pretty boring.
Right.
You need the randomization once in a while to go, what about
this? You need us 4'11" people.
What about this odd little thing we haven't thought about? And it might make life better because of the odd little thing. But he's like, this is part of that conversation. This is sort of the first step. It seems
so odd.
It does seem odd. It seems extremely, in a way, terrifying, but also awesome. Right. The funny part is that you're listening to it, the guy's talking about this, and Joe has an abrupt way. He talks about having ADD a little bit. He's just in conversation. He goes, "So how long do you think it is before people have 4 arms?" He was like, "What?" It's already been a meme on Facebook. I've seen it.
As a mom, you could use that.
How long do you think it's going to be before people have 4 arms?
As a mom, that would come in handy.
Oh, goodness. That's hilarious. But yeah, so check out episode 1294 with Jamie Metzel. And if you're interested in checking out an interesting book, I may download this one, Hacking Darwin. It sounds fascinating. Again, it's a science fiction book, but it's based on real things that are happening right now. And it's getting a lot of attention from a lot of people. So anyway, I'm going to wrap this up now because we've gone over an hour, and I know you did not plan for an hour.
No, not at all.
But
I thought 20 minutes max.
Thank you for doing this. What? 20 minutes? Are you kidding me?
My pleasure.
You're the person I wanted to talk to the most.
You just say that to keep your fans thinking that you're just Mr. Wonderful.
No.
Which you are.
I'm not. But thank you for putting up with me, for putting up with this weird obsession. On the camera, I don't know if you guys have ever seen it, but I have a weird piece of wood holding up our microphones. Like my wife jokes that it's reaching out to E.T., some kind of extraterrestrial thing. At some point, we are going to take over one of the bedrooms and transform part of it to have a studio so that we don't have to move stuff back and forth whenever we have guests. But also... That's
with more tens of dollars.
Yeah, with the other tens of dollars we're getting. But also, it's sort of... it will allow the consistency again of allowing a space to be there for creativity for this. And also so that it doesn't impede in our normal life. Right now this is in our kitchen. So if it's not, if I'm not doing this in the kitchen, I'm doing it by myself in our bedroom. And it would be interesting.
In the office area.
Yeah, but it's still in our bedroom.
It is.
Like you can't have guests just come and hang out in your bedroom. That's just awkward. I mean, if it's, other than Greg or Alex,
We'll get there.
I know, but I'm saying...
it's been a year.
It's been a year.
It's been a year.
We've done a lot in a year. A lot.
You've done a lot on this podcast in a year.
Yeah. Again, thank you to everybody. Thank you to Byron. Thank you to Champ. Thank you to Alex and Brandy and Mom and Dad and Kyle and everybody out there who's been part of this. Terry's reached out up in Canada. A lot of people. A guy on YouTube by Big Daddy 1992. He's on there all the time saying, "Hey buddy, appreciate the stuff, man. You're doing a great job." I'm like, "Thanks, man." Just little words of encouragement when you guys write me. It matters, and I want to tell you how humble I am and how thankful I am. So,
and happy birthday, by the way.
Thank you.
I know it was yesterday, but
yeah.
Big bad 45.
45. But thank you to everybody who's listened and been a part of this. Please remember to rate, review, subscribe. And reach out to me if you want to be part of this and you have something you want to talk about. We'll do one. We'll hang out and we'll talk and we'll figure out something. But we can grow a community together, and I can't be thankful enough. So
it's been fun. I love you, babe.
I love you, sweetheart.
Can I push the button for the cow?
You want to say cue the cow?
You say cue the cow. I'll push the button.
No, it's not a button.
I was just kidding.
You can say cue the cow.
Cue the cow.
There we go. Now I go on here and I stop the video.
That was fun.
This is where the cow would go, "Mrrr."